with the name of Allah Almighty, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Ladies and gentlemen, today we'd like to discuss about objective reality, objectivity, objective approach and subjective approach. In today's lecture, I'll try to define objectivity, objective approach, subjective approach, Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand philosophy of objectivity. We'll be discussing about her life and way of her explaining objectivity in her various books like a Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. So we'll be discussing about her books as well as her philosophy. According to Ayn Rand, she is a Russian American philosopher. She is having liberal philosophy. According to her philosophy, reality is totally independent of man's perception and discerning and learning and discerning and perceiving and receiving whatever person is receiving, human being is receiving, perceiving and getting data. Reality is totally independent of whatever person is perceiving, listening and hearing and discerning and getting. What is objective and what is subjective approach? Object mean object, objective mean object, so it is related to any object. So object has its property. If a tree falls somewhere in the jungle or forest, if somebody does not hear the sound, does it has sound? Exactly. If a tree is falling down or it's falling somewhere in forest or in jungle, still it has sound, because sound is the property of this object. Whether you perceive or not, still there is a reality and still it has existence and it is having sound as well. So reality is independent of the person's perceiving, someone's perceiving, or human being or subject, whatever subject is receiving or doer is receiving or subject is perceiving and receiving and discerning and getting. Object is having reality like property, whether you perceive or not. But talk about the subjective approach. It is based on the subject, person or someone, whatever he perceive, whatever he believe. For example, if person, we describe something according to subject, according to someone, according to pronoun, according to any person. So if he or she perceives something, she will say that this thing exists or not. For example, if somewhere tree falls in forest and the person who is not over here or subject is not over here, he or she is not listening to something, he or she can claim that there is no sound at all. So this will be subjective approach because it is not based on the object. If we perceive something, it can be good or bad. It can be acceptable for somebody or not. But object, since object is having its entity, its property, whether you accept or not. Talk about the sound of when something falls down, like tree. If it falls down anywhere else, it falls. What will happen? It will create a sound, whether I perceive or not, but it is having objective reality. It is having its property. So object property, whether I discern, whether I perceive, whether I get sound or not, it is still having its existence. Talk about the Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand say Whatever you perceive or I perceive or somebody perceiving, it is limited. We can perceive reality, but we are not going to create reality. It is totally independent to our thought, feeling, emotion, passion, because our senses will perceive whatever limited we can perceive. But the reality is in the universe, in which is totally independent to us. It can't compared with our senses. We are nonsensical enough if we are talking about this big cosmos according to our limited five senses. Our five senses can't perceive this cosmos. This cosmos is vast enough. Our five senses, they can't perceive. So therefore she says it is it's a duty of our perception to perceive through our limited resources, but we can't invent reality. We can only perceive. So whatever our senses are perceiving, it is a limited one, and it is independent to our thinking, whatever we are thinking in our mind. For example, I want that everybody should follow according to me. When I get up early in the morning, I think that there will be thousands of people, they will be receiving me. Since I can perceive in my mind, I can think in my mind, but the people, they are not depending on me. So whenever I will come out, I am expecting there will be thousands of people, they should receive me and they should act according to my orders. This is what can I perceive. It's my perception. I'm living in fantasy and ideal world. My perception are receiving data, whatever limited resources I am getting through five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, sounds. So whatever I am giving through my mind, brains, it is ultimately making for me reality. But reality in the world, it is totally independent to my senses. So Ayn Rand, she gives five principles of objectivity. She discusses in her books Fountainhead, a Fountainhead, which is one of the masterpiece of Ayn Rand. She even discussed five principles of objectivity. First is metaphysics. Metaphysics, what is the existence of this world? So what is this universe? So metaphysics deal with what is this universe. And then she also discussed about epistemology. Epistemology mean what is the knowledge of knowledge, what is authenticity of the knowledge. It's what epistemology. She discusses in her book what is epistemology. She even discussed about ethics, how to deal with others. This is what ethics. Friedrich Nietzsche, he has his own morality. So she's having her own. She says that the best thing one should do for himself. She rejected the altruism, to think for others at the cost of himself. She says, she questions, why should we think for others, leaving ourselves? So we should work on ourselves. If we can do something for ourselves, then we can do for others. So altruism, she rejected the concept of altruism, that we should be helping other at the cost of our loss. So she even discussed about politics, how to live in a society. It's what politics. And she even discussed in her book about aesthetics. What is aesthetics? How to do things beautifully. So these are five principles. And she discussed about objectivity. She discussed reality is totally independent to our senses, but we are having limited resources of perceptions and discerning things, and perceiving things through our senses, and we can't claim that reality is existed only in our senses. Something happens somewhere else, but our senses are unable to perceive it. Still reality is a reality, and object is having its property, and we can't compare with our senses whatever happening somewhere else. Subjective approach mean we are evaluating things with respect to our belief, dogma, our ideas, our kind of our perceptions, our discerning. So whatever we are claiming, having belief, having dogma, having just observations about something. So whatever we are making judgment, we are perceiving, or we are having belief or having dogma, and we decide accordingly. It is known as subjective approach. But whenever we are evaluating things on the basis of observation, facts and figures, and having values with respect to the property, and we ultimately give decision, ultimately give observations on the basis of fact and figure, it is what known as objective approach. Hope you got the point. Stay blessed and have a nice time. Subscribe and like the ESL Academy. Stay blessed.